Hello, Ann. This is Mike. It's good to have you with us. And we're still waiting on Mike Jones to show up with us. I'm Mike Harris. But it's good to have you with us.
So how has it been going then? Have you managed to get a few people on in the end?
Yeah, I promoted the wrong person to a panelist, though. Ann, I love you, but I'm going to have to kick you out of the panelist room, okay?
No worries.
Hold on just a second. There you are, Mike.
There we go.
Okay, we've actually got, looks like we got 5 attendees in the room right now.
Excellent.
And
cool.
So let me kind of roll through and see who we've got. I'm looking forward to starting this up in just a few minutes. Okay, we've got Ann, of course, that I unfortunately had to give her the boot out of the panelist room, and I very, very much apologize for that, Ann. I just pulled the wrong person in. Camille, good to have you with us. Jonathan, it's great to have you with us. Michael, I've actually had a couple of conversations with Michael already. Good to have you with us, Michael. Stephanie, great to have you with us as well. And let's see, we've got about 30 seconds before we kick it off, and I will jump right into it.
I'm going to take a seat because I have been stood at this desk all day and I'm ready for, it's like nearly 6 p.m. now and I am ready for a sit down.
I hear you.
No standing desks. Let's pull the blinds down a little bit.
Cool. And for those of you who don't know yet, I'm going to introduce Michael in a minute, but he's coming to us from across the pond. And so in the chat with you window, why don't some of you folks share on where you're coming from with everybody else? I'd like to hear it.
Yes, I see the old
Awesome.
chat.
Awesome. Yeah.
Florida. There's been a big storm blowing through Florida. I had one of my colleagues was due to fly to Guatemala from New York. I had him sat on the plane for 2 hours, masks on and all the rest of it, and then they made him get off.
Hey, darling. Good. How are you? I'm here to pick up a car. Kennedy.
Stephanie?
Yeah, that is me. What you got for me?
Let's see. I actually need to mute. Mute everybody.
Is too small.
What you mean?
Yeah, let me go through and check some of these other folks out here. Love you all. Would love to have everybody have a chance to participate here, but I think we'll have too much noise going on if we got everybody talking. So it is time to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mike Jones. Mike comes to us from across the pond here. He's been in the industry for probably longer than I have. When I say in the industry, I'm talking about in the business of helping people get the most they can out of LinkedIn. I work with a specific audience. I think most of the folks who are here know that I work primarily in the financial services space, mostly in the family office arena. And I help folks in the family office space use LinkedIn efficiently, effectively, and productively. And more importantly, also compliantly, because folks in the financial services space and insurance have a lot of compliance issues to deal with on top of everything else. So on top of trying to make money. So, and that's what most of us who are using LinkedIn are for. We're here for. We're here to drive business. Everybody on LinkedIn is looking to either be found or to find opportunities to help grow business and to accomplish business objectives. So that's what we're all here for. So Mike is the founder of Beep2B, which sounds kind of like a Roadrunner cartoon name for a business, but it's not. It actually is very appropriate when you know what it stands for. It's build, engage, educate, and promote, and it's a formula for growing an audience and for generating revenue and building businesses and accomplishing business objectives on LinkedIn. So Mike, that's my intro, and I'll let you get on and tell a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks very much, mate, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you guys. And it's nice that it's a little group, because I'm sure we can bat a few questions around and stuff like that, and I can maybe really help a few people if they've got very specific questions and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I kind of fell into the LinkedIn world about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I suppose, not long after it was a thing that you could use LinkedIn. And the reason I fell into it, at the time I was running a digital marketing agency, and it's back when like Google was still quite new and all of that stuff. So we built websites, and we did search marketing and email marketing and all of that stuff. And really social media was just starting to be a thing that we could use in business properly. People were still trying to figure out what the hell this LinkedIn thing is, and this Facebook thing, and this Twitter thing. It was all sort of that initial wave of these platforms. And I was trying to grow my business. I was running this agency. I was looking for new clients, and LinkedIn seemed like a place that I could potentially do that. I was networking and going to, I was going to the BNI meetings and, all of that kind of stuff that small businesses do to try and grow their client base. And I found LinkedIn and started kind of playing around on there. And the story, as I like to tell it, there was a company, at the time I was based in quite one of the smaller cities up in the north of England, which is a grim place for anybody who's ever been there. But anyway, that's where I'm from. And there's not a great deal goes on there, but there was a couple of companies in the city that I would really wanted to do business with, because there were some of the bigger companies. And I've been trying to get hold of the managing director of this one particular company, because I knew I could absolutely kill it on Google for him. And he had all these opportunities, he wasn't taking them. And so I'd even paid like £500 to go to a charity dinner that I knew he was going to be at, in the hopes that I would, get to meet the guy. It didn't happen. And so I connected with him on LinkedIn and just sent him a little message. Hey, I think I can really help you out, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we should have a chat about it. And, wondrous of wonders, he replied to me and was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Why don't you pop round to the office? And so, I went round, we had a chat, and we got on, and he liked what I had to say. And I sold him $20,000 pounds. It was a £20,000 bit of work, and we ended up working with him. He became one of my biggest customers. And so I always I love that little story about LinkedIn, because I just saw that happen time and time again. And so the digital agency thing was a lot of fun at the time. But I'm a family man, I won't get into my whole personal story or anything like that. But, I lost my dad quite young. My dad died when I was 18. Kind of grew up with him being pretty terminally ill right through my teens. And life's important. You can't waste it. You've got to seize it, and you've got to live it and enjoy it and do stuff that brings you joy and brings those around you joy as well. And I found myself running the digital agency and just driving up and down the road all day long, going to see clients in London, and all this stuff I was doing. And meanwhile, I'd had children. I've got 3 beautiful children, and they were we had 3 kids under the age of 3, so they were all these tiny babies. And my wife, bless her, was having to kind of deal with that at home while I was out on the road seeing these clients. And I said, what? This isn't the life I want. I don't want to. What happens if I die when my kids are 18? They're not going to know who I am. I'll have them pick me out in a crowd. And so I wanted to very intentionally build a new business that would give me the lifestyle that I wanted for my family, and the ability to spend the time with my family that I wanted. And I just loved the LinkedIn thing. It was like, well, this is just such a brilliant opportunity to grow our businesses in a really nice way. And it's right, I don't need to leave the house. I could be sat here, in my pajamas, just chatting to these CEOs of businesses and who knows what. And part of what we'd done in the agency actually was to develop some technology to automate some of the stuff, because, I want to be efficient. I don't want to waste time and all that stuff. And so I thought, hey, I wonder if I could actually bring some of this to the market to professionals, because at the time, the only tools that existed for social media automation were really spammy, affiliate, get rich quick on Amazon, whatever, that kind of thing. And I thought, well, no, you know, sensible business people don't want to use that. They don't want to get rich quick. They want to build their businesses. So maybe I could take what we'd created in the agency and turn that into a tool that real businesses could actually use. And perhaps I could create some training as well. And that's when I came up with the BEAT method around that time, because I needed a way to kind of explain and give a framework for developing effective campaigns for social media selling, particularly in B2B and high level B2C. And so that's what I did. You know, I think it was 2013, we first sort of soft launched with some of our products. I met a wonderful partner who was also a LinkedIn consultant in the US. So our business is US based. We're incorporated in Arizona. And we've been doing it ever since. So we've been around a while. You know, most of, I've seen a lot of businesses come and go, unfortunately, in this situation that we're in. But it's, you know, things are always changing on LinkedIn, Mike. I know you know a lot about that, and you've got to keep up, or you fall behind pretty quickly. And you know, the things that we can do one day that are totally legitimate are the things that are breaking the rules the next day. So you've just got to be on top of that. And that's what we try to do, I think. So
yeah. And you know, Mike and I have a few things in common that he may not be aware of, but that probably shaped both of our careers to a large extent. I also lost my father at a very young age. I was actually 19, and in Europe at the time. And so I kind of always feel like losing my dad at a very early age put me in a disadvantage to you know, getting out there and learning how to engage and operate in the corporate environment, and, you know, how to build relationships and all those kinds of things. So really, those were things that I'm not complaining about it. There was, you know, my dad gave me a lot, just probably not everything that I really needed as I got older, because our needs and our, you know, our circumstances change over time. And one of the things that a parent does is mentor you throughout your life. And, you know, when we miss some of that, then we got to pick it up elsewhere. And I'm not sure how much help my dad would have been, even had he been around, helping me to learn how to use LinkedIn and social media. That's something I had to pick up on my own.
My dad was 50 when he had me, so he was born in the 30s. He would have been absolutely useless at giving me any advice about LinkedIn. I'm sure.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things I hated to see this, but I hear this from a lot of other folks though, is we really don't figure out how smart our kids are, or our parents are, until we're, you know, in our 30s and 40s anyway. You know, generally our parents don't know anything while we're teenagers. You know, they're just dumb. They just don't get it at all. And as we get older, they get smarter for some reason or another. But I actually came into social media as a matter of necessity. I spent most of my career in technology. I went into banking in 1980, but as a night shift computer operator. And then, you know, from there, when I left the bank, I went out on my own. I became self-employed. I took a chance on a couple of positions that fell through, and being really young, you know, I left one job before I was absolutely certain that I was going to get the other. And when that fell through, I had to do something. So I got out and started fooling around with these little toy computers. And this was back in the early 80s. And I started building them and selling them. And then from there went into putting them together in little networks. And, you know, from there started getting a few bigger jobs, got some more education, some certifications. And, you know, before you know it, I had 9 employees, had 9 engineers that were scattered all over the country doing work in the corporate environment for folks like International Paper and Sylvan Learning Centers and, you know, Pearson Education and KinderCare and Green Manufacturing, you know, a lot of big company work, stuff that I never thought I would do when I left the bank earlier in my career. But I was blessed. I had an opportunity, and I had a really good run in that business for about 17 years. And then Y2K came up, and that the turn of the century, and all the airplanes were going to fall out of the sky, and the grid was going to go down, and water was going to stop running or start running backwards down the drain or something like that. It was just all kinds of weird stuff was going to happen, and for some reason or another it didn't. Okay. I would like to think that maybe I had something to do with that. The year leading up to Y2K was probably the best year I ever had in the business. I was charging $195 an hour to send my guys out and go through and turn up the clocks and upgrade the BIOS on all the computers that they had, and it was very good. But unfortunately, I can't think of a single airplane that fell out of the sky because of Y2K. And that became sort of an implication that maybe we were just out there trying to squeeze money out of people for no reason. It didn't actually, the catastrophe never came to pass. And on top of that, the dot-com bubble busted. And a lot of those folks who are in the technology business found themselves out on the street trying to make money at $10 an hour. And so I decided at that time to help my guys and girls find other work with other people and shut my technology business down. I'd had enough of it. I was tired of herding cats. I don't know how many of the guys out here in the webinar room have ever managed a bunch of engineers, but each and every one of them is always the smartest in the room. My apologies to anybody that are engineers out there, but it's the truth. So it was really hard to keep those folks working in a team, and having someone to lead the team and make things happen. But but I enjoyed it, and it was a gun run, and I was blessed to have had relationships with all those folks. And but I decided to kind of go solo, and I became a technology instructor. I worked at Auburn, Alabama Technical Center for about a year, teaching networking courses. And then I worked with John Patterson Technical College. I was on their Y2K committee, and also at Alabama State University, I was on their Y2K committee, and I was kind of like their head networking guy. Those were also great relationships, but I knew that I was heading out of the technology business, and I had always had a penchant for investing. I did it on my own, so I decided to. I got my advisor with Edward Jones told me I needed to go to St. Louis because they wanted to hire me to be a wealth manager, and so I did, and just shut down that part of my career. That was 2004, so that was 17 years ago. And I stayed with Edward Jones for about 6 years, and this is becoming a long story, but I'm getting to the part where I did this. I got into social media out of necessity. I was with Edward Jones for about 6 years, and in 2010, of course, we were at the bottom of the Great Recession, and I had a disagreement. We had a falling out with Edward Jones, and obviously they weren't going to bend. They're the 800-pound gorilla of the mutual fund industry. They're not going to change the way they do business. And so I left and started my own wealth management firm. River Wealth Management was an RIA. And I found myself very suddenly in an environment where I had no clients. I had very little in the way of a marketing war chest, not nearly enough to go out there and compete with those folks who are doing, big, expensive television commercials and marketing campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't know that much about it anyway, of doing business the normal way that people did it back then. And Edward Jones wouldn't let us use social media. And I like to think that because if people were using social media effectively, Jones might have lost a lot of people a lot sooner. Who knows? But that's what I did over the next, I did that in 2010, and over the next 4 years, I became very adept at using LinkedIn because my business is a business to business, kind of thing. I went after business owners. I went out looking for high net worth families that had money to manage because that was my target audience. And my primary vehicle for doing that, because I didn't have a whole lot of marketing money, was LinkedIn. So I learned how to use it, and I learned how to use it very effectively. And I had to get around the compliance issues that are a big part of my industry. So I learned how to build those relationships through creating content, through targeting my audience very carefully, and by developing messages and by reaching out with a value proposition and unique selling position that resonated with my target audience. So that was a pretty substantial learning curve. And in 2014, I put that together in a well-defined process and started offering it to other people in the financial services industry who normally would be considered my competitors. But I figured, there's $19 trillion of wealth out there for people to manage. I think it's okay if I don't have all of it. So I started sharing what I knew about social media marketing with the folks in that space. And that's where I am today. I am the administrator of about 8 different groups on LinkedIn, all of them focusing on people in the high net worth and ultra high net worth space and family office space, and the people who provide services for those folks. And altogether, that's about 27,000 people. So that's my network that I reach out to, and that's where my client base comes from. And that's occasionally I still do private equity deals, so I'm not completely retired from the financial industry, but I did shut down River Wealth Management in 2019, and that's my story. That's how I came to be where I am and what I'm doing today, even right now. So that's my story. For those that didn't know my story, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of what this panel discussion is supposed to be about, and that is, how to create content and how to, build your audience in a way that will drive business. And Mike, I want to let you kind of dive into that and share some of what you know about that.
Yeah, cheers. And that's an interesting. I didn't know we had that in common about the old dads at a young age thing. It's it certainly sets you off in a certain way in life. But yeah, I mean, I think before we get right into the meat of some of the content stuff, and I've got a few slides that we can share in just a while. Sure. that they'll be probably quite useful in some clear direction and instruction on some do's and don'ts kind of stuff. But I think it's just worth, understanding where LinkedIn's at as a place of doing business, because as we both realize, in the last few years alone, in fact, the past few months alone, there's been some quite significant changes. And I think a lot of that driven by the pandemic, by this massive influx of people coming online. Last year, I think the number of sessions, as in people using LinkedIn at any one time, jumped by 25% when all the lockdown stuff started happening. More people at home using their social media and all the rest of it, and maybe spending less time commuting, so they've got more time for it, and so on and so forth. But with that, what we've also seen, and clearly LinkedIn's seen this too, and actually this has been coming long before the pandemic, but it's kind of the industry I've sort of birthed a little bit and pioneered back in the day. This idea of being able to automate certain aspects of the stuff that you do on LinkedIn, which I have a platform to do just that, and I'm a big advocate of it. However, it's got to be done right, and we've always been put a lot of effort into teaching people to do it right and not abuse it and not just generally, be a nuisance on LinkedIn. But wherever there's an opportunity for kind of mass communication using technology, people are going to show up and abuse it. That's the bottom line. And it's exactly the same on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and so on and so on. And we've really seen that recently with LinkedIn. When I first developed our first, version 0 of our platform, I had one competitor in the marketplace, and they were quite ethical too. They were good people. They're no longer going, but we became friends in the end. I think right now there's probably about 50 or 60 different programs you could use to go and automate certain things on LinkedIn. And every week I get, you know, emails sent to me of, oh, have you seen this new platform or that new platform? And equally every week I hear about another one of those platforms, you know, dying a death and they're no longer doing business and stuff. And there's just this constant flux. And what it's meant is never before has it been more accessible for people to just buy an automation tool, not really know what they're doing, you know, almost naively get one of these tools quite cheaply and just abuse it and send too many invites or whatever. And so, you know, the way that people have been doing it for a long time is to send a whole bunch of invites to people to connect with them, you know, kind of people in the right target, and then send a whole bunch of messages to try to sell them something. And that's pretty much been it for a lot of people. That's been the entirety of their strategy, which for me is very shallow. And, you know, certainly we do a lot more, as you know, with our tool and the way that we approach it. But the thing is, that's worked. For a long, long time, people have been able to generate a good amount of appointments every single month just by basically spamming in the nicest possible sense, even if they didn't realize they were doing that, but not really adding a whole bunch of value, not really, you know, doing much to develop those relationships other than say, hey, you know, would you like to have a meeting with me? Here's a link to my calendar, go book online. And so that has worked for a good amount of time. But as far back as a couple of years ago, I was kind of looking at this and seeing these new competitors spring up. And I thought, there's only one way that this can end, which is it becomes saturated. LinkedIn have to take action. They put an end to this as a strategy. And so way back then, well, what can we do? How does this affect my business? Because I'm completely reliant on these approaches for my livelihood. I built this business. I can't, you know, I need to do, what am I going to do to make sure that we're still at the top of our game? And I realized pretty quickly that the differentiator is content. It's about actually, you know, going onto LinkedIn, being a thought leader, putting stuff out there and using that to build those relationships and build credibility and just generally be, you know, a good actor in the whole thing. And that's the thing that people just weren't doing. So I went all in and put a lot of effort and a lot of time into figuring out, well, how can we use technology then to leverage this content and get forward? Because one of the big problems I had was that, you know, we've got the BEAT method, as you mentioned: build, engage, educate, and promote. And so, you know, build, that's basically inviting people and building out your network, and engage, that's basically sending message to people and trying to get conversations going. Educate, well, that's content. That's coming, you know, creating valuable information, valuable things that you can share in order to develop trust and credibility. And then you know, promote, you're basically trying to sell stuff to people and promote them. That's pretty self-explanatory. And the problem I had a few years back when I realized that things aren't going to work out well if all you're doing is sending a whole bunch of invites was, you know, tell people you need to be working on the content thing. And I really got a lot of pushback from our client base at the time, because they would go off and, you know, they'd write a big article and it'd be really cool and really insightful and really interesting. And they'd post it up on LinkedIn and they'd get crickets, you know, they'd get like 100 views or whatever, one like off like their old school friend or something like that. Really, really, really difficult to get any leverage on and actually get some reach on that content. And I thought, well, you know, hey, what's the problem there? What's the issue? And that's where we kind of came up with the feed formula. We did a whole bunch of research to figure out what are the things that affect the LinkedIn algorithm. You know, from back in my digital marketing days, my background was SEO and Google and all that optimization. It's basically kind of the same thing, but you know, just on LinkedIn. So it's all a program. It's all something that you can figure out and reverse engineer and figure out how it works. And so that's what we did. And so I've got a few slides. Shall I go ahead and share my screen, Michael, and kind of just share some of the stuff
Absolutely.
that we found in some of the best practices.
Yeah.
And you know, how you can actually implement some of this stuff. I need permission to share my screen, I think.
Yes,
please,
you do, don't
Harris.
you? You do, don't you? Oh, okay. There you go. You've got it.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Right, can everybody see my my slide? I'm on the last slide, which isn't gonna be much use, but there we go. Everybody see my slide deck coming through there? I can't see the chat now. I've lost it somewhere. Can you see that all right, Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. I don't have anybody responding, but I can see it fine. I'm sure everybody else can too.
Good to go. Okay, cool. Well, yeah. First things first. I use this slide deck repeatedly. So please feel free if you want to connect with me. You're more than welcome to on LinkedIn. It's always nice to get to know people. And that's my profile there. I think I've updated it since I've made this slide deck. And I mean, this will be interesting. I've lost the chat somewhere, Mike. So maybe you can feed back to me. But I always just like to ask people, just so I get a read of where everybody's at in the room. But for those of you that do or have posted on LinkedIn recently, how many views do you normally get, or are you even aware of how many views that you get when you post stuff on LinkedIn? It'd be really, if you can drop that in the chat, that'd be really interesting to get that feedback. And maybe you can share that with me, Mike, as it comes through.
Yeah.
Well, while you do that, I mean, I just wanted to kind of share this diagram. It's a little bit techie, so we won't dwell on it. But we actually found this on one of LinkedIn's engineering blogs, and it was there. One of their engineers was kind of showing off how they'd implemented their algorithm. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to get some value from that. And so I just like to show people, because LinkedIn are quite open about. Obviously, they don't tell us exactly what metrics they're using at any one time, but you can kind of figure it out. And luckily, I get to see literally tens of thousands of posts and how they perform and stuff. So I'm very fortunate to get those kinds of insights.
Yeah. You ready for some feedback from the chat?
Yeah, please. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Camille is the only one that shared with us, and she's saying she's getting 300 to 1,800 views on her posts. So
interesting. That's
very obvious. Yeah, that's office. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's I would suspect then, and as we get into the metrics that are driving that at the light end, then 300 will be when there's a lack of engagement, because that's one of the most important factors. And on the other end, I suspect it will be when she's had a good deal of engagement early on. That's when you're going to see those bigger numbers, and really that's what we found. And that's what this kind of feed flywheel taught us, is that LinkedIn's got this universal content filtering algorithm that they use, and there's various things that they're using within that, but essentially, when we sit, this is the bit that I call the flywheel here, where we're looking at, they continue displaying it. They monitor likes, views, highs, and flags. They then measure it against their algorithm for virility and various other things. If it's not very good, they demote it. But if it is good, it goes up a notch. And that just keeps going round and round and round and round. And so we figured, okay, we understand that, and we understand some of the things there, likes and views and so on, that must be influencing this. And so let's run some experiments and do that. And so that's what we did. So I'll share with you exactly what we found from that. I think it's, I always just like to share with people, and these are actually slightly out of date now. The opportunity is even bigger than it's ever been. But at the time of creating these slides, LinkedIn was claiming that there are 9 billion post impressions every single week on their platform. 9 billion, very big number. But the actual rates of people that were engaging, we surveyed about 45,000 premium senior executives. So people are paying to use LinkedIn, and only 1 in 100 of them were actually doing any content at all, anything. I mean, it's crazy. There's 9 billion opportunities to show your stuff to people, and yet only 1 in 100 people are taking advantage of that. So, and it's still the same now. There's a huge opportunity, and I think especially in certain niches, that the wealth industry being one of them, there are some really insightful things that you guys can be sharing, and most people just don't take the time to do that. And so it's a real differentiator and an opportunity, I think, to position yourselves as thought leaders, as the go-to people in your industry for what you're doing. And that's a competitive advantage where I'm from. So, you want to be taking advantage of that. The other thing as well, as we've kind of touched upon, is that, that just relying on trying to just connect with lots of people isn't going to work in its own right as well. There is still a place for that. Actually, I spoke about this on a call yesterday. That absolutely, you still do need to try and build that network. That's part of, when we build these BEEP campaigns, you absolutely need a mechanism in there for growing your network and engaging those people. But if you're not doing the content thing, the rest of it doesn't work. That's the experience I'm getting. And with the invite limits that we're now experiencing for those of you who aren't aware, LinkedIn introduced a weekly invite limit towards the end of last year and rolled it out to everybody in the spring. And essentially that limits you to 100 invites per week. So, bearing in mind, I'm well aware that there was plenty of people out there doing 100 or 200 even invites per day using some of these other tools. Imagine that, it's all the lead count that they've been able to get with that volume of invites, just playing the numbers game, kind of spamming out those invites. It's down to 15%, 10-15% of what they could get. So if they were getting 10 leads a month on that, 10 appointments from that strategy, now they're getting 1. And that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. So if you're not embracing this kind of approach of actually, I need to be building that network and nurturing that network and delivering value to that network through the content that I'm sharing, find another platform. LinkedIn ain't going to work for you anymore. It's as simple as that. And many people are as well. Those people that have been kind of a little bit lazy, we're seeing them leave the platform, which is great news, because that just makes the opportunity even bigger for those of us who are willing to actually invest some time in building those relationships. So, the opportunity just kind of gets even bigger.
Now, I want to interrupt for just a second before you move on, because there's an important other thing to keep in mind. There are a lot of people out there who relied completely on spammy automation to drive their business. And then once LinkedIn deployed this, this limitation, they just decided LinkedIn is just not a platform to do business on anymore, which could not be further than the truth. There have always been better ways to use technology to drive business rather than, spamming out your network. And the content strategies are really important, and sending out junk spam has never been a good way to do business.
No, couldn't agree more. It's like I said, I genuinely think it's great news, because all the shysters that are just kind of lurking around causing problems, they're gone. And that's cool. That leaves even more room for the good guys. And, let's be the good guys. Simple as, we'll win the business. So I mean, the point I just wanted to make with this slide was that the thing with content, apart from the fact that it's just massively underserved and there's an opportunity there, is we've all heard this idea that you've got to have 7 to 14 touches or whatever. There was some research, I think it was quite old research now, that suggested that, because the number's way higher than that in this world of hyper social media that we're living in. Probably more like 60 based on the research I've been reading. And obviously, how are you going to achieve that realistically with somebody that you've met on a social media platform? Well, again, this is where your content comes in, because what we find a lot on LinkedIn is that there's just a bunch of people that don't engage. They lurk around. We call them LinkedIn lurkers. They're just floating around on there, being nosy, looking at stuff, reading stuff, checking out profiles. They're not really chatting. They're not posting stuff themselves, but they're there and they're good prospects. They're interested. And if they see the right thing, they will engage, and if you reach out to them with the right message, they will engage. But it's kind of almost like this invisible crowd of people who are potentially interested. They're watching what you're doing. So if you're the guy or gal who's posting the good information, they're seeing that. They really are. And so you've always got to be mindful of the LinkedIn lurkers, is what I will say, because that's the secret sauce right there. They're the people who will really take that one lead a month into being 10 good leads a month without being spammy. Okay, cool. So moving on, I'm conscious I normally do this slide deck in an hour, and we've got quite significantly less than that. So I'll kind of blast through, and we can do some questions at the end as well. If everybody wants to chat, we can do. One thing that I'd just like to highlight is that, your profile is really important. That's your landing page on LinkedIn. Obviously, it's outside of the scope of this conversation. But there are a couple of free resources there. There's links on the slide there. You don't need to put your email in or anything like that. I just thought it'd be useful to give some extra bits there for free that people can use if they want a little bit of help with that. So feel free to take advantage of those. But the point I wanted to make really is that as you start to post more content, you're going to get more profile views. And so you really want to optimize that to make sure that that's the point where you can be a bit more salesy, you can be a bit more promotional, because hey, somebody's checking out your profile. You should at least make them aware of how they can engage with you and how they can do business and what it is you even do properly. And your profile is the place to do it. So with that said, what to post then? Well, obviously that we've got a number of different opportunities there. We've got what we call feed posts. So that's, you've got text with or without images. You've got images just by themselves. You've got native video, which, you know, you actually upload to LinkedIn. And then you've got things like documents and presentations and polls. They all appear in your feed as well. There's a few nuances with all these types of content, and not all content is equal on LinkedIn as well. So when you're looking at your numbers and you're doing stuff, it's just worth being aware of kind of the differences between all of this and how it works. So first and foremostly, my advice is stick to feed posts mostly. The reason I say that is articles, they just don't get any traction. You know, we've got some technology. I'm going to kind of explain how that works and how you can use that to boost your reach and get more visibility. But even with that, still articles just don't do very well. It's almost like it feels like LinkedIn, they've not announced it, but it feels like they may be sunsetting that as a thing that they're interested in, because they just don't give it much love. It's as simple as that. And, you know, very often I meet people who spend a bunch of time and they write such great content. I'm very fortunate to be connected to some brilliant writers, especially. I like following good writers because it's so wonderful reading well-written content. And they'll write these long, beautiful articles that are really interesting and insightful, post them up as an article and get barely any traction at all on there. So I'd steer you away from doing articles. Where I think they're useful on LinkedIn is to create something that's kind of cornerstone that you can direct people to through your messaging, through your profile as a featured thing on your profile or something like that. That's really cool. You know, people will go and look at that, but it's more of you using it as a tool to direct people to, rather than as an inbound way of gaining more exposure. You are going to get that though with those feed posts. Text posts in particular, I was literally on a mastermind call last night. I have a very intimate group of some of the greatest people in the world, in my opinion, in terms of the LinkedIn community. And we just kind of meet from time to time. And only just last night, we were sharing some results and some insights that we've got. And right now, bizarrely, LinkedIn is massively favoring just plain text with nothing else above and beyond absolutely everything else, which is kind of crazy. You would think that they would want the images and that extra stuff in the feed. That might change. This stuff is always changing. Like I said at the beginning, it's just a case of keeping up to speed with what's current. But for right now, you're going to get the most bang for your buck just by a simple text post. And interestingly, LinkedIn have recently expanded the number of characters you can use in one of those posts. And by that, I mean, you know, when you just go to your homepage, you click post and it just drops straight into your feed. And so they've expanded that massively to 3,000 characters now, from, I think it was 1,400 or 1,500 before. I honestly think that's a really bad move. I don't think there's any value in that at all. The art of good writing, and I do endeavor to try and improve my skills there, and I've still got loads of improvement there. And, you know, I work with some writing coaches and everything, because I think the written word is such a powerful tool to us as marketers and business people these days. It's always something you want to be improving and working on. And I think it's like good code as well. Obviously, I'm a developer too. The less is more. You know, the best code, it takes the fewest lines. The best writing takes the fewest words. It's always the same. And so I think I'm slightly concerned about LinkedIn expanding this number of characters, because I think it just makes people say less in more words, which isn't good for anybody. But we will see. My advice to you though would be keep it short. You can do an awful lot with 300 or 400 well-written words that share some kind of insight that are really going to position you as somebody cool and are easy to consume by your network. You don't want to force them into some long-winded thing. So text is really cool. Images are great. You can just automate that stuff though. You know, I always like to just get some nice branded quotes or something like that and just very scatter them through my kind of editorial calendar over the course of a month. I might share 2 or 3 or 4 of them or something like that. Just an excuse to show up in people's feeds with something motivational or something inspirational or something that, you know, kind of fits with our brand. Native video is really good as well. Now, that's worth just mentioning. That's the stuff that you actually upload to LinkedIn, not to be mistaken with Vimeo or YouTube or other video sharing platforms, because you won't get anywhere near as much reach if you share anything that takes a person off of LinkedIn. You know, understandably, LinkedIn want to keep people on LinkedIn and looking at their ads and clicking their stuff and all the rest of it. And so, you know, you don't want to do anything that takes a person off of LinkedIn. If you must link externally to LinkedIn, always drop it in the comments because you'll get away with it, at least for now. But native video is really cool, and that's the stuff that you upload directly to LinkedIn, and they do give that some value. Worth noting that the way they log the stats on that is completely unique. Video views are completely different to feed post views, which are completely different to article views. So there's three different stats you could see on there, and they're all completely different, so you can't compare them at all. One last thing about video though is, and I'm seeing this increasingly on LinkedIn, people are putting out these very long form videos, and honestly, I think anything over even a few minutes, you've got to be really careful with, unless you know you've got an audience on there that want to consume it. Because most people, as they're scrolling through LinkedIn, they're not on there to consume a 20-minute video. They're just not. And so you're not going to get much value from that if you put it on there. They'll watch a few seconds and disappear off. What I'd recommend is, if you've got a longer video that you really want to get out there, put it up on YouTube maybe, or on your website, whatever. I mean, you know, people go to YouTube to watch videos, so you can absolutely share much longer videos there. But put it up on YouTube, and then instead of sharing that on LinkedIn, share a post that promotes it. You know, talk about the concepts that you're covering in the video or whatever, kind of a teaser and a bit of a short promo with some insights, and then send them off to go and watch the bigger video. You'll get much better engagement that way, and you're not trying to force your people in your network to just, you know, watch something that they're never going to watch. You're just not going to get a result from it. And then, you know, stuff like documents, polls, that kind of thing, they're great as well. They're an easy way to create highly engaging content as well without having to write a post every time. We do have some guidelines. I'm going to share them in just a moment. The magic number that we've come up with is actually 14 pieces of content per month. Works really, really well over the course of the month. It's kind of a mixture of all of these things. But if that's like, oh my God, how am I going to do 14 pieces of content? Honestly, if you can consistently do just one a week, if you can commit to do one decent thing a week, you'll get rewards from it. You will win business from just doing that. And we see people doing that all of the time. Works really well. Yeah, let's not go too deep on that, but commenting as well is a really good way of adding content to LinkedIn. Just very quickly, we work with somebody over in Australia who, that's all he does. He does the connect, you know, he builds his network and stuff. He runs a Beep campaign, but the educate bit for him is just purely commenting. And so he seeks out pieces of content that he can add some sort of really, you know, meaningful, insightful thing and complement the content. And he adds it there. And very often his comments are actually better written than the posts that he's posting them on. But, you know, the authors of the post connect with him and want to do business, and people read his comments. And, you know, he's built this amazing business. He's doing, you know, millions a year in just doing that. So that's a great way as well, but I don't want to get too deep into that. Hashtags are worth mentioning too. So, you know, all a hashtag is a way of signaling to LinkedIn what a post is about. You just, you know, little pound sign followed by whatever the word is. You can easily do this stuff wrong though. So there's just a few best practices for you with that. First of all, use them really, really sparingly. I often see people just trying to spam the end of their posts with like dozens and dozens of like random hashtag things. A lot of the time they're just not even relevant, and they're just desperately trying to get exposure for their posts. It's not going to work, and LinkedIn doesn't like it. And even more importantly than that, it just looks terrible to anybody trying to read your post. It's not a great impression. So use them sparingly. 3 to 5 is a good number. If you can weave them into the actual body of the post itself, well, that's brilliant. You know, it's just very, very elegant way of doing it. You can create your own hashtags, which is a nice thing to do. You'll only get limited reach with it, but it's useful. It can be useful for sharing within your companies and things like that as well, and just getting people to do that. But what I'd also recommend you do is actually go and research really popular hashtags, and you can do that directly from LinkedIn. Let me see if I can find it on mine just to give you a quick demo of that. Yeah, if you go and look on your left-hand side in your main feed, if you go and look at the kind of followed hashtags, you actually start to get some data for how many people are following stuff. So rather than just randomly making up things, you know, you can pick stuff that's relevant to what you've posted. And I mean, there's some 36 million followers, 33 million, 18 million. You know, there's some good actual proper hashtags there, and you can kind of follow that stuff and do some research around it as well. So I'd highly recommend looking into that, because that is going to get you more views. That is going to get you more reach and new people finding you. So I always like to share this quote as well. You know, people aren't interested in goods and services. They buy relation stories and magic. And I know sometimes people take that with a pinch of salt. The product's got to be right, the offer's got to be right, and so on and so forth. It absolutely has, and I would never disagree with that. But the point I just want to make is LinkedIn is social media. It's a social media platform, and social. There's got to be some emphasis on the social element of it. There are people on there, real people, and actually people are most interested in other people above and beyond everything else. Can I trust this person? You know, are they credible? Can I learn something? Can I gain something? Are they a threat to me? And so on and so forth. All of the psychology that goes with that. And so when you are thinking about what it is you want to post, you need to be mindful of that as well. And the more you can be a real person rather than just somebody with a product, you're always going to get way more engagement. All of the posts that we see getting the most engagement ever is, you know, personal stories, triumphs, failures that have been overcome, vulnerabilities, things like that. You know, without giving the game away, you want to. It's cool to be a little bit open on there, and there's no harm in that. I've practiced what I preach. You know, if you look at my profile a little while ago, I didn't for years. I didn't do this, although I knew it would probably be good. But I just, you know, I didn't want to be that open in public. But you know, a little while ago, I altered my profile and shared my story about, you know, my dad and the reasons why I want to do what I do. And it's really genuine. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to put it out there. And if people like, you know, want to work with me because of the passion that I've got, then that'd be really cool. And instantly I started getting more inquiries, and people, you know, everything worked a lot better just by focusing on me as a person who happens to have a business rather than a business and me trying to be the dude selling stuff out of it. That makes sense. So we have a little system. We call it 5W2S, based on the kind of age old who, what, why, when, where, why. But we also suggest it should be sharing stuff, and you got to sell as well. There is room in there to do some promotion, and you absolutely should. So in the interest of time, I won't go too deep into that. But again, there is a little resource there. If anybody wants to go and swipe that through, you know, you're welcome to grab a copy of that. And there's just a whole bunch of post ideas based around that thing. And equally as well, you know, as I said, we've kind of got to this point where we see that a nice minimum effective dose of content to be pushing out onto LinkedIn is around 4 posts, 4 images, 2 videos, 2 articles, and 2 shares per month. So you can, you know, you can learn from that. We've built a little calendar around that as well. So if you want to go and check that out, there's a link there too. I'm sure we can, I guess we can send this slide deck out afterwards maybe, or just share those links if anybody wants to.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
I'm just conscious of time.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to send this chat out to everybody too, and there will of course be a recording of this this session, and everybody will get access to that as well.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Like I said, normally we kind of was chatting for a while there at the beginning, so I'd normally take an hour to get through this deck. So I'm just conscious you know, maybe drinking from a fire hose is probably the thing there with some of these ideas. And I do want to leave some time for questions as well. But anyway, we can always review it.
Sure.
Yeah, so the feed formula search. So as I said, we did a lot of research, tested a lot of things, very scientific kind of approach to doing it. And where we got to is this as a feed formula, that the ideal number is if you can get around 15 likes and comments, so not just the comments or just the likes, you need both. But if you can get around 15 and you can do that within 2 hours of your post being shared upon on LinkedIn, and then you reply to those comments, that's going to get you the most exposure, because what's going to happen there is LinkedIn, when you first post, they just show it to a small number of your network. And if they don't pile on and like it, you ain't going to get any traction. So I know Camilla shared earlier, sometimes she gets 300, sometimes she gets nearly 2,000. And the reason for that will be because in those situations where she's not been able to get a good number of engagement, and actually the number can vary. There's lots of factors. We're trying to distill some very complicated algorithms into a simple formula here. So, it's just a rule of thumb. But generally speaking, if you don't get that engagement in that first couple of hours, that's when you're going to be on the lower end. It's probably going to show it to 200 or 300 people that happen to be online, and then it'll just fizzle out and die a death. You're not going to get another bite of the cherry. You might get a bit of engagement dripping in just if people check your profile, but nothing proper. Whereas when you do get the engagement, we regularly see people getting 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 views of their content in their feed, and literally going viral. When LinkedIn can see that a piece of content is popular, they just open the floodgates, they send notifications, they push it into everybody's feed. It's beautiful. It's lovely when that happens. It really, really is. And of course, you get an absolute ton of exposure as well. So, of all the things I've kind of spoken about, that's a really useful formula to be aware of when you're trying to get exposure on your LinkedIn content. So how do you do that? That's the question, and that's sort of the thing that we've solved. I realized pretty quickly, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with this kind of idea of an engagement pod, which is basically where a group of people come together and agree to like and comment on each other's posts and content in order to try and get more visibility in social media. And so we see them on Instagram, we see them on Twitter, we see them on all over the place, and LinkedIn's exactly the same. And so that fascinated me, because I thought, well, maybe there's something we could do based on the research that we've got, to really make sure that would be successful, and make it a long-term consistent thing that people can get a result from. So I could see that was a thing, and I realized that, I started looking around to see, well, how are people already implementing this? And very quickly I found that, some people were trying to do it in a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group or Slack or whatever. And all of those things had their problems, they really did. And the reasons are quite simple. For this to be successful, it has to run on a schedule. There has to be a point in time, because of that 2-hour thing. It's constrained by time. And so a lot of the time people are trying to create these engagement pods to get the better results, but people would just drift in anytime, whenever, and maybe they would engage and maybe they wouldn't, and whatever. And so they never, just don't really work very well at all. And equally, they've got to be diverse too. You can't just have the same people, saying the same comments time and time again and hope that you're going to get the results. LinkedIn's way smarter than that. And their goal is to share good content, not just be gamed or whatever. So your content's got to be good, which brings you on to the next point, which is you've really got to have quality there as well. And so you can't afford to have people sharing crappy affiliate offers or just, rubbish content that links off of LinkedIn or whatever. You can't have that. You've got to have good quality content, but you've also got to have good quality people leaving meaningful comments on it as well. It's got to be a professional standard for it to be able to work long term. And of course, to achieve that, it's got to be managed, it's got to be policed. You need a system to do that. And so I built one. There wasn't one. Nobody had anything. That there are a few platforms that try and do this kind of thing, but they either didn't have the scheduling in there, or they didn't have enough diversity. Mostly they didn't have the quality. There was a lot of people just posting trash, literal trash that, you just couldn't put your name to, you couldn't comment on ever. And so, with that, we went ahead and created that platform, which we launched actually about 18 months ago now. And yeah, we've been very gradually developing that network, because, we didn't want to mass market. We didn't want the wrong people in there, basically. So, most of our members have come usually from groups like this, actually, where I've had the opportunity to go out and meet people, or we've shared stuff with them that way. And we've been able to determine that actually they're good professional people that are interested in developing their personal brand and their LinkedIn, rather than just trying to abuse the system and spam it. So we built a platform. It's called beeptogether.com. You can go and there's a little video on there that explains stuff and some bits and bobs on there as well. It is a paid for platform. I don't want this to be a big pitch or anything like that or whatever. But one thing that I thought was that would be useful just for your group, Mike. I know we didn't get a chance to discuss it, but I didn't want this to turn into a big pitch and you've only got so many days or whatever, because it's just cheesy, isn't it? But I just thought it would be nice if anybody does want to have a go with it. It's a monthly thing. It's normally $99 a month. And you can cancel at any time. There's no contracts or anything like that. But I just thought if anybody in this group did want to give it a whirl, we could actually do a little bit of a promotion just and maybe discount the first month by 50% for people in your group, Mike. So we've got a coupon linked Insider. I'll share that with you, Mike, so you can share that with people in due course. But that'll get people a little discount if they want to give it a whirl and learn a bit more about it. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in there. We call them post parties because we like to have a party when we're posting, and we just have these times all throughout the week. I know, Mike, you're very familiar with it, and it works, man, doesn't it? It's a pretty cool thing. So there we go. There's a lot of information condensed into 30 minutes there. So if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them and stick around or just check out those resources, and hopefully they'll be helpful to people as well.
Yeah. Can I get you? Has your chat window working yet, Mike?
It is. Yeah. I've just
cool.
It back on now. I've stopped sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. You could drop that link in there if you want. And of
absolutely.
course, anybody else that has questions at this time, this is a great time to ask those questions.
Okay. Let me drop the discount code in there as well. Let me grab it because I've capitalized the Insider bit, and if you don't use the same capitalization, it won't give you the discount. There we go. That should work. That should work just well. Yeah. Do we have any specific? Oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that daily dose as well. That's a really, we get loads of really good feedback on that. Yeah. So Camille's got a question in terms of the schedule. The 14 person month, I wasn't able to see the very calendar very long. So the calendar very long. So basically, twice a week. Yeah, slightly more than twice a week. It's like three to four times a week is the thing. As you'll see, if you want to, I've stopped sharing my screen, but yeah, if you go and check out the little download that I gave you there, which is, it's a bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/B2B-content-calendar. What we actually do is make some suggestions there in terms of, there is some of it you could absolutely automate. So for example, we mentioned, sharing a couple of images. Well, they could just be, from a stock of images that you've had created that are branded, that are relevant or whatever, and just schedule those up. So it's, we've put a lot of thought into thinking about efficiency. As I was saying at the beginning of the call, life's too short to be sat on LinkedIn all day. I've kind of this productivity thing going on. So yeah, if you can automate bits of it, you should, and that should free up your time to be able to focus on creating some quite good stuff. So you have another question?
Yeah, Steve says they don't see your post in the chat.
They
don't see the link and discount code in the chat.
Oh, okay. Apologies. I've got.
Well, they do see the discount code. I saw the discount code, but not the link.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, my bad. It's default into all panelists. There's the link, and let me repost the discount code as well there for you. Sorry about that. You should be able to see that now. Sorry, Camilla, you've got a fairly granular question. Okay, I'm with a cannabis startup in the past. I've not seen much cannabis content gain traction. I was thinking perhaps I'd go from the medical or health direction, which is more consistent with the brand versus cannabis. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and I've had a little bit of experience with this. I think we had one or two people in our community over time that have not necessarily cannabis specifically, but I think we had somebody who was involved in a CBD oil business, and they had a kind of a similar issue. And I think the problem is, or it's not a problem, it's just a thing to be mindful of, is people are very self-conscious on LinkedIn. You know, we're all kind of on there trying to look bigger than we are and be more successful than we are, because one, it's social media, and two, it's about our businesses, and that's just what we do. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think people, you know, because of the perception of cannabis and hippies and, you know, smoking joints and all the rest of it, some people may be worried about being associated with that stuff and therefore not want to engage with it, even though they might find it interesting or whatever. So I think you just do have to be, you know, careful and mindful of, well, how can I position this content so that somebody can engage with it and look good, you know, and actually, you know, it adds to them as well.
I would also interject something here too, and it's really important, and that is that a lot of people fail to gain traction with their content because they have not really developed a target audience and they haven't created a network that is targeted. If you use Sales Navigator to determine who you want to connect with and who you want to be part of your target audience and what groups you want to join and where you want to recruit your audience from, and then market to those groups, you will find a lot more reception. And I know for certain, because I got clients who have been in the CBD industry and the cannabis industry, it's becoming a burgeoning, a really big group of people who aren't really afraid to talk about it at all. And you just have to make sure that you're getting the right audience. You want to get the audience that is interested in what you have to offer.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. I think it's definitely becoming more mainstream anyway. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to, if you want to catch up with me offline, I can actually take you into Sales Navigator and show you how to do that. And for anybody who is on the call now that is not using Sales Navigator, and by the way, Mike nor I, either one, have, you know, get anything from LinkedIn for telling people to use Sales Navigator, but it's almost like, you know, if you're not using Sales Navigator, it's almost like putting a governor on a Maserati as a sales tool. You really will not be as effective as you want to be until you're maximizing the value of Sales Navigator. It's $79 a month. It's cheap, and it will very, very easily quadruple your results from your LinkedIn marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I mean, and on the other end, a free account will, geez, I mean, you're not even supposed to use it for business anyway. I always find that ridiculously ironic that it's LinkedIn, this business platform, but it's very clear in their commercial usage agreement that you should not use it for commercially unless you pay them. There you go.
Yeah. Well, and they do restrict your access to the platform if you don't pay them.
They do. Fair enough. They're going to make a living too.
Okay, it says, how do you best go about grabbing attention in 3 seconds with just text? That's a great question. And it's one of those things that newspaper editors have been doing for centuries. Okay. And that is through a headline. You can catch somebody's attention with a headline that is the first sentence or the title of your post very easily. And sometimes in 1 second. When you think about it, 3 seconds is a long time. It's 1001, 1002, 1003. And very frankly, that's about all the time anybody's going to get on LinkedIn to get their attention, because people are very often going through their messaging on a daily basis, and they've got literally hundreds that they're going to go through. So, you know, when they're going through their feed, they might go through the first 2 or 3 pages of their feed, and if it doesn't look interesting immediately, they're not going to consume the content. So you've got to have a great headline. You got to keep it short, and you know, the strategy that Mike was talking about a few minutes ago is to, you know, number one, have a great headline. Number two, keep your post shorter than 300 words. And if people are interested, if you've gotten their attention, they'll happily click on a link that goes to an article that you have posted on LinkedIn that goes into more detail. And so I'm with Mike. Never create a post that's more than 300 words, because it's a waste of your breath and people aren't going to read it.
No, they're not. And I mean, another approach that I see work quite well, and I mean, that is just such great advice. And I think the art of writing a good headline, if somebody was to ask me, what is the number one copywriting skill that every business owner should constantly try and improve, I think that's it. It's the art of writing a good headline, because if you can do that it just sets you up for so many other things. And you can always improve. And the best copywriters in the world would say, I could write that better, or I could think of it better. Another approach you can take, though, that can work quite well, and again, speaking to my point about personal interest and storytelling, is to start with a story. So I find that quite a powerful way of stopping that scroll. Is the marketing speak is, when people see the starting of a story, once upon a time, or whatever, you want to know whether or not they lived happily ever after. And so that might be an interesting way of being able to get that attention at least long enough to get them to read the next couple of sentences, and then the next couple of sentences, and so on as well.
Right.
So
it's
couple ways you try that.
The yellow brick road leads to the Wizard of Oz. Okay. Or it leads to Oz, which is that magical kingdom that we would like to think is the place where we get all the business that we want.
Maybe you've seen behind the curtain, Mike.
Yeah, I have seen, but I'm the man behind the curtain. So, and I don't want you to ignore that man behind the curtain. You need to learn from him. So,
yeah, very cool. Well,
right.
Looks like the questions are kind of drying up a little bit. I don't know if anybody else has got anything there, or if there's anything else you think I could help with, Mike.
I can't think of anything. I'm going to send everybody an email that attended, and it's going to have, I think your newsletter is awesome. That daily newsletter that you send out. And I'm going to encourage all the folks that attended today to subscribe to that, because it's a great resource. It's always a really short read. Emily Walsh sends out that newsletter on a daily basis. She does a really great job of crystallizing some really important concepts that we need to be reminded of on a daily basis. Because if we're not reminded daily, a lot of the good stuff that we can do, we'll just forget, because you don't pick up everything, and you don't adopt everything the first time you're exposed to it. So
yeah,
she does a great
shout.
job.
I keep, everybody tells me maybe we should charge for it, because it's like the amount of people that's like, I can't believe you're giving away all that good stuff for free. It's like, well,
yeah,
that's our way of adding value. I have to say,
that's right.
I think we launched at the back end of last year, and every day we get loads of new subscribers. And up to now, nobody's ever unsubscribed. I've never had that before, ever, on any list any thing we've done. And
well, she does a phenomenal job. It's great content, and so I look forward to it every day.
Yeah, me too. It's good. I enjoy reading. Learn something.
All right, great. Well, nobody else is asking any questions, so with that said, I think it's time to say goodbye. And I know you're probably, what's the time difference again between here and there? I think it's like,
we're 7:10 in the evening now, so
7:10. So you're missing dinner right now. So
it's dinner and beer o'clock.
Dinner and beer o'clock. I hear you. I like that. All right. Well, Mike, I appreciate you very much. I appreciate you coming on board.
Mate, I appreciate the chance to chat to everybody.
Yeah, I look forward to doing it again soon. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Take care.
Right.
Nice to see you all.
You too, buddy.
Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Appreciate everybody else for coming on board with us. So y'all have a great day, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.